Foreign Officer James North.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wish to intervene for the second time in this debate, just to bring to the floor of Parliament, as I've done on many occasions, the plight of persons with disabilities as it comes to accessibility in Barbados on our public roads and in our public places. The issue of sidewalk accommodation for persons with disabilities in the public areas is of prime importance to them, and would wish to, remind the Honourable Minister to consider this very important segment of our population in any of his policies and programs and projects. On at least 2 occasions within recent times, persons with disabilities have actually demonstrated their plight through Bridgetown. For example, the difficulty of traversing Bridgetown in terms of the sidewalks, and any government needs to plan the physically challenged in their programs in addressing issues of public works and transportation. Right now, the persons with disabilities and their organizations have a petition which it is hoped would be delivered to the Right Honourable Prime Minister at the end of this month, calling for amendments to the Road Traffic Act. I don't know if the Honourable Minister is aware of it. I know that the Right Honourable Prime Minister is. To legislate for parking for persons with disabilities in all major public places, certainly. We know that some private sector groups have done that. The thing is, Mr. Chairman, we've been hearing about this from the Honourable Minister for years now. The amendment to the Road Traffic Act. And one thing about the Honourable Minister, he speaks about what he plans to do, but doesn't do it. You don't see it. And the Honourable Attorney General, same thing. We're going to be bringing this legislation to Parliament in the next 2 sessions, or we're bringing it next month, and we're bringing it in the next 2 months, and they haven't even reached draft stage yet, not even yet on the order paper. And the Road Traffic Act amendment is one of those plethora of pieces of legislation which have been promised by this Democratic Labour Party government and which have not reached the floor of Parliament. And accommodation by law for persons with disabilities is certainly one. There's also the issue of providing curbs persons with disabilities according to international standards, where there are pavements provided. The petition will certainly ask for the amendments to the Road Traffic Act to penalize persons who park in spaces that are reserved for people with disabilities. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, yes, the issue of clamping down on persons who do not pay road taxes and vehicle insurance and driver's license fees has come to the fore in the debate. I, of course, am now directly seated opposite my friend whose ministry I shadow, the Honourable Minister of Education, and I now look directly at him on this particular issue, Mr. Chairman. It was announced yesterday that 25% of persons, I think it was announced by the Honourable Attorney General that about 25% of persons in Barbados do not pay their road tax. I suspect that it is more than that do not pay their vehicle insurance either. Certainly from my law practice as personal injuries is one of my major areas of law. There are too many vehicles, and I suspect at least 30% are on the road without having paid vehicle insurance. And this is certainly a problem because when motor vehicular accidents occur and there's no insurance to pay and the people don't have the money to pay out the pocket when through their negligence injuries are caused in the accident, this is a serious problem. And society and the state ultimately bears the cost. And therefore, I would wish to urge, we on this side would wish to urge again what we've heard from both the Honorable Attorney General and certainly the Honorable Member for St. James South in terms of this electronic vehicle registration coming in, whereby it will be easier to detect persons who either willfully, negligently, or unintentionally have not paid their road taxes and vehicle insurance and driver's license fees, to detect this and to penalize them quickly for failing to pay. Certainly, again, as an attorney at law, you visit magistrates' courts. I mean, the Eric Holder complex in the parish, the constituency of my learned colleague, the Honorable Member for St. Joseph. You go there on a traffic day, and hundreds of people up there. And you say to yourself, but this is an absolute waste of time. You come here to pay a low $100 fee, so many people there to collect it, as, again, the Honorable Minister of International Business said, the magistrate, about 3 court clerks, the prosecutor, about 10 police, and hundreds of people standing outside to pay that. And certainly when I go, these days, I could appreciate I might only go if there's a constituent who asks me. But, you know, invariably, there are going to be about 6 other people who see me there and say, man, Mr. Hinkson, call my case, say, I can't wait here till 3 o'clock. I got to go and pay my workers. And I mean, in this age, 2016, we must be able to find a better way to deal with this issue. My colleague, the Honorable Member for St. George North, raised the issue of the continuing lack of a building code in place in Barbados. And of course, Mr. Chairman, this is something that we've heard of for years. I was deputy chairman of a committee between 1999 and 2003, and when we demitted office from that position in 2003, we had a full draft building code on the table. That was 13 years ago. So I think that the Honorable Minister for Public Works needs to account, and the Honorable Minister for Housing, rather, needs to account, both of them, as to why there isn't a building code in place, certainly in terms of public places. And again, would want to urge that persons with disabilities are taken into account fully in terms of accommodation of that building code. I believe, Mr. Chairman, that maintenance of government buildings falls under the Ministry of Public Works as well, and nothing to do now with blame in terms of parties. Both political parties have been guilty of this over the years, failure to maintain government buildings. And it seems easier to allow the government building to fall into derelict condition and then to have to now move and build a new building at millions and millions of dollars to replace this building, rather than properly maintaining and voting in estimates every year monies to maintain government buildings properly. Even the Magistrates Court at Whole Town, for example, no maintenance. That whole Town complex that used to be a beautiful issue, you know, that of course is part of the history of Barbados, because I believe that that's said to be the first place the British settlers came in 1625 or 27 and landed in Barbados, and we've not maintained the issue. We have as well Also raised during this debate, Mr. Chairman, has been the issue of the widening of the ABC highway. And I wish to say that this question would not be of debate here in a 2016 estimates if the vision of the Right Honourable Tom Adams as Prime Minister of Barbados had been followed, because his vision was that the ABC highway would be 4-lane from the start. But the Democratic Labour Party said that it was a criminal act to build the highway in the first place. And now we here, parliamentarians, over 30 years after, paying the price for that. Because, of course, the cost now of widening some sections from 2 to 4 has been astronomically increased because of a failure to understand the vision of the Right Honourable Tom Adams and the Barbados Labour Party government of the time. But that is the price that Barbados pays for visionless political leadership and myopic political leaders on the part of the Barbados Labour Party. We've had, of course, Mr. Chairman, raised by the Honourable Member for St. James Central. Again, an issue that where your own dog and bite you, where the Democratic Labour Party puts an old woman on the bus last election to help them win an election, you know, that the Barbados Labour Party want to privatize everything and people are going to have to pay bus fare. Citizens of Barbados are going to have to pay bus fare. Children are going to pay school meals and all of that to win an election. Narrow, naked political gain. And what are we hearing now here today? What do we hear from the Honourable Member for St. James South and the Honourable Minister of Finance, other than look, we need now to rationalize, that is the word I use, statutory corporations, and we're going to have to amalgamate, and we're going to have to look at privatization, and we're going to have to look at public-private partnerships and all of that, when it is that side, Mr. Chairman, that put an old woman on the bus, used her shamelessly to win an election. I have not heard, after almost 2 days of debate emanating from the side of the government, Mr. Chairman, any strategy, any clear strategy on the transport board. Almost 2 days in this parliament, starting from 9:30, the whole front bench cabinet, except the Honourable Prime Minister contributing.
Please wrap up.
Yes, sir. And not hearing any clear strategy, definable, that you could go, that I could carry now to my constituency tomorrow when I canvass in, and to tell them, well, look, this is what the government here now planning for the transport board. We hear of painting for pedestrian crossing supplied by private sector, which I'm glad, you know, the private sector does help out, and we have to recognize that, because the government, like, doesn't even have money to provide paint for pedestrian crossings, because when I asked for pedestrian crossing at St. Boniface Nursing School across the highway to where by Sion Hill, I was told, but Mr. Hinkson, we want to put this pedestrian crossing for you so that the little children going to the nursery wouldn't get knocked down. But we can only put it when we get the paint. So I'm glad to hear that the private sector, the Honourable Minister for Transport, has found the paint from the private sector.
Remember your time has expired.
To put that pedestrian crossing.
Mr.
Chairman, I'm grateful to you and obliged.